Let's talk about Amazon earnings. Stock symbol AMZN. Reported after the bell. Wasn't the best response. They beat on earnings per share. They beat on revenue. The problem is that their forecast was well below expectations. As a result, you get the sell-off. Now, going into earnings, it had this beautiful consolidation. I really like that a lot. I was hoping that we'd get perhaps an opportunity that the earnings reaction wouldn't be too bad and that you'd have an opportunity to play the breakout to the upside. That looks like that's going to be far much in question now going forward. And prior to that, you had this beautiful bull flag. I was able to play that one to the breakout on this breakout here. Made a little bit of money, not too much. I think considering how the DeepSeek news came out a couple of weeks ago, and then you also had the tariff news, Amazon has held up pretty well. I mean, it has been pretty stable in the midst of some pretty radical news. But the earnings is going to create a little bit of a challenge here, but I think that there's a secondary play that could be of interest to you. First off, look at this rise in trend line on Amazon. This goes all the way back to the August lows. It's held it pretty well going back about 6 months now. And you can also draw this parallel channel band here. And this one technically lines up pretty well with the lower channel band. It's not a perfect slope, but it's pretty darn close. So what we have, and I'll go ahead and put the post-market reaction on there. You have this pullback to the rising trend line. What you want to see is three things happen. You want to see it test, you want to see it hold, and then you want to see it bounce before you consider getting long on it. It doesn't help to just see it tested and say, okay, I'm going to buy it because it's right on the trend line, because it could very well blow right through it. And that's where a lot of people say, oh, technical analysis doesn't work because the support level didn't hold. Technical analysis doesn't mean support and resistance is always going to hold the way you want it, or that the lines are going to do exactly what you expect it to do. It's guidance. If it holds, that's telling you something. It tells you that the buyers are stepping in and bouncing it off of a key psychological support level. If it doesn't hold, it's telling you that the supplier or the sellers are overwhelming the demand, and it's sending the stock lower because there's not enough buyers to be able to hold it at that psychological level. So right here, we want to watch to see whether or not this rising trend line can hold and support the buyers and then provide a good bounce. But again, you have to see the test, the hold, and the bounce. If you don't get all three of those things, pass on the trade setup. Now, if you can get that to happen, I think this one sets up pretty well for a potential run all the way back up to this rising channel band. That's at least what we would like to see. And the other thing that I do like about this is that throughout this whole time, it has put in higher highs, and barely a higher high right here, but it was a higher high, and higher lows. It has not stopped that pattern. So that pattern is still in place. The trend is still your friend in this case. So ideally, you want to see it get back up into the mid 250s. If it can do that, that turns out to like the ideal trade here, because you can get in with a pretty decent reward risk setup. Now, what a lot of people want to do, again, is they want to buy it right on the trend line. That's no good for me. I don't care about trying to get in right at the bottom here at the trend line and try to get out at the top, because you set yourself up for a loss that could have been prevented, especially when you're trying to buy at the very bottom here. Instead, you want to get the meat and potatoes of the trade. You want this midsection. You don't need to get all the way in at the bottom here, because there's plenty of profits to be able to make here in the midsection. When you do that, the meat and potatoes of the trade, you're letting other people figure out whether or not it's going to test, hold, and bounce at support. And then what you're doing is you're playing on that validation. You don't need to be the person that's trying to make that happen. Let other people figure that out. But overall, I think this is a pretty decent trade setup going into tomorrow if it can hold that level. And again, I want to be able to see it hold that and actually come back. And post-market, it did test it. But what I want to be able to see is it actually do that during regular trading hours. I don't want to just be like settle in at like 229 and just shoot higher tomorrow and never come back and test it. If it does that, I'm not going to get into it. But if it does pull back and retest this like 224, 225 level, I think there's a pretty good opportunity there to get long. If you enjoyed this video, I would encourage you to like and subscribe, and let me know down in the comments, what are your plans with Amazon? Did you hold through earnings, or are you going to buy some on the dip tomorrow, or are you just going to avoid it altogether? Thank you guys, and God bless.